All right. So we're live. And what I wanted to go over with you all, real quick here. So the assignment for this coming week, this is the drawing that you'll be working off of, and it looks kind of complicated. But this is what I want to go over today. I'm just going to kind of show you how I would sketch this so that when you do it for your homework, it's a little bit less daunting. I've kind of, in the past done exercises and then handed this to students, and it's just like, oh no, where do I start? So I don't want to put you in a sink or swim kind of situation like that. I want to give you the information you need to do this. Um, so this is a DIN rail mounted terminal block, basically. And most of you are probably somewhat familiar, but in case you're not, I've got some pictures up. So this is what DIN rail looks like. It's basically just usually made out of aluminum or stainless steel or something along those lines. It just attaches to an electrical panel, and pretty much everything that you put on your panel clips onto the DIN rail. So this is a clip that goes on the back of a relay. Um, and you can see this is the relay sitting on the front of it, but you can see the clip part is just this metal piece on the back, and this is it without the relay on. So this end hooks over one side of the DIN rail, and then this is got a spring on it, so this hooks over the other side and kind of grabs it. And then it's easily removable by just kind of pushing up on it, and that stretches out the spring, and you can unhook the top loops here. So here's another view, kind of. You can see these little hooks hooking around here, and then here's a spring, and there's going to be a couple more little hooks here. So to go back to our picture here, this is a terminal block, so you can see this is the kind of top hook here that would hook over the DIN rail, and then this piece, this would probably be made out of plastic, and this piece right here, kind of, you can kind of stick a screwdriver in here and stretch this part out to unhook it from the DIN rail. So that's kind of how that works. I don't know if that was the most clear description, but anyway, the reason why I kind of want you guys to do this is it's a good shape to kind of start sketching. You use a lot of different types of tools in order to sketch it, and it's easy to do it just in 2 dimensions. We're not really into extruding stuff quite yet. We'll get into that next week. But you can just do this 2-dimensional shape right here. So don't worry about, this shows you how thick it's supposed to be. Don't worry too much about that. You're just going to do this shape. You're just going to draw the outline. And then one thing that, if you're familiar with mechanical drawings much, you'll know this, but one thing that they do pretty frequently is if there's like a detail in the picture, they'll circle it like this, and then they'll blow it up. So you can see the circle says B, and this is detail B up here. So you can kind of see, actually, no, this is detail B right here. I'm sorry. It says detail B underneath. And you can see that that's pretty much just this little section here, but blown up so you can see all the dimensions. And then same thing with this this hook part here. They call it detail C, and they blew it up right here so you can see all the dimensions on that section. Does that kind of make sense so far? I'm sorry, did you have a question? Yeah, and we'll get there. I'm going to go over all of that with you. So this is basically, you would draw 3 separate arcs here. You would do 1, and then a little arc, and then, so that would be 2, and then 3. But we'll get that. I'll walk you through all of this. So This is why we're going over it. So if you go to Lab 1, right here, I have this already published, so you should be able to open it. So go ahead and go in there if you can and open up this DINRail Mount Rev A PDF. That is this picture here. So if you're able to follow along with me right now, that's awesome. If not, just watch this later and try to follow along. So if everybody has that open, and actually real quick, has anybody not been able to download the SolidWorks software? Okay. Did you run into any issues, or have you just not done it yet? Oh, that's right. I think we talked about it. You were just gonna come in and use the school ones. That's totally fine. Um, so if you're not able to follow along with me right now, basically, it's fine. If you can, that's ideal because that way you can kind of ask me questions in real time. But if not, then just go ahead and watch the lecture later when I post it, and try to follow along then. And when you do that, feel free to message me with any questions you have. I just might not see them, in real time or right away. So, all right. So I'm gonna move this. Let's see. Got my SolidWorks open. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna move this over to my other screen. So if you do have SolidWorks, go ahead and open that PDF so you can look at it, and I'll be doing this sketch right here. Um, all right, so we're going to do a new sketch. We're just going to go ahead and choose the front plane. And this is how I would do this. And this is a tricky shape, so I've sketched this a bunch of times before. But I'm gonna run into stuff where I'm like, oh, how did I do that? I don't know, because this is kind of a tricky one. So that's why we're going through it. So hopefully any weird stuff that I run into will help you when you go to do it. And don't worry if this is a hard one. If you have a hard time with it for the homework, if you can't get it perfect, don't worry too much about it. Ideally, you would have it, fully defined and looking exactly like the picture, but that's rarely uh, possible in week 2 of the class on your first real assignment. So, um, I'm not looking for perfection here. I just really want to give you the opportunity to try all these different features and play around with them and kind of figure out how they all work. All right, so what I always do with stuff like this is I try to start with the big stuff. Like I don't start with the details because then you're going to get bogged down on the details and you're going to not be able to, get things fully defined. You're going to have a really hard time getting the proportions right and everything. It's kind of at this stage before you're actually dimensioning stuff, it's kind of like drawing a picture. You just want to start with a rough sketch first and then work your way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my line tool right here. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm just going to start at the origin. You always want to start your sketches at the origin. Not always, but most of the time for the purposes of, of right now, pretty much always. It's just easiest to have things fully defined that way, because it does have to have a point. Every drawing has to have a point that is either on the origin or dimensioned off of the origin so that the software knows where in space your picture is, basically. So we'll just start at the origin here. And then I'm going to start with the left side just because it's a straight line. So we're going to go straight up and down. And you can see when you move your line around, I don't know if you can see it on my screen, but there's a little number by my pencil there. So the number is the kind of the approximate length of the line. I think it's just rounded a lot, but and then the angle is 90 degrees here. If I move it over, it's not going to show me the angle unless I'm on like a 45. So that's 135. This is going to be 180. So this direction here would be 0. Anyway, I'm going to start with my line going straight up. So it's going to say 90 degrees. There we go. And I'm just going to click to drop a point there. And then I'm going to do this, this angled edge here. I'm just going to kind of go up in that general direction. I'm not giving it like an exact angle right now. And then straight across horizontally. So you're going to see that blue dotted line shows up. That tells you that it is horizontal. And we'll just click to release that end. And then we'll go down a little bit. So we've got this little kind of corner hook here. So it goes down, in, up at a slight angle, over, and down to about the same level as the origin. But I'm not going to go to the exact same level because if I do, you see that blue dotted line? That means it's going to create a relation for that point. So the software is going to create a relation saying that that point is horizontal with the origin. I don't want to do that because I don't know if it is. So I'm going to actually click just above the origin here. And then that bottom hook is kind of a pain. It's pretty complicated. I'm just not even going to do that right now. So I'm going to hit the escape key to let go of my line. I'm going to start with this, and I'm just going to start dimensioning. So if we look over at our PDF, we know that left line there. Let's see, let's click the Smart Dimension tool here. And that left line is going to have a dimension of 25.9. And actually, before we do that, I'm going to escape out of that. Before we do that, I don't know if you've all seen this. In the bottom right-hand corner, you've got this MKS here. This is where you can choose different units of measurement. So I don't think we want meter, kilogram, second because we want smaller units. And this drawing, I don't believe actually has units on it. But my guess is that those would be millimeters. If you think about the size of a piece of tin rail and the size of a regular terminal block, that looks like millimeters to me. So let's just select MMGS, which is millimeter gram second. And then when you do that, it kind of exits you out of your sketch. So we're just going to go back into the sketch. Oop, not there. Let's just click on our shape here and then edit sketch right here. So if you didn't see how I did that, I just clicked on the sketch I was working on. I clicked on one of the lines, and then this little box pops up. You can do edit sketch. It's this little icon right here. Can everyone see that? Okay, so you click that and we're back in our sketch here. So now let's start dimensioning. And we're going to make this edge 25.9 millimeters. Because that's what the drawing says to do. And then it does not give us a dimension for this line. But let's see. It does give us this one. So we're going to go from here to here. So did you see how I clicked that left line and then the far right line? And it'll give me the ability to put a dimension between those. So, and that distance is 32.5. And that kind of stretched it out quite a bit. So this line right here is also dimensioned. It's going to be 23.5. So I'll add that one. Alright. And it looks like this line right here is 4.5. And then this little tiny line in here is going to be 1. Oops. And is that, did I make that 2 lines somehow? I think I put a point in there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to you're talking about when you changed your dimensions. You're getting, is this what you're getting? Okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't clarify. So you want to right click. Actually, well, no. I think what's happening is you're actually already in the sketch. So is this up here, does it say exit sketch? On your Okay, so you're already in the sketch, so don't worry about it. You're fine. So if you want to erase a line, just click on it with your left mouse button to select it. It'll turn light blue like this, and then just use the delete key. Did that work for you? Alright, so I'm going to keep dimensioning here. So we can click this line here, and then we're going to click this point. And it says that should be 1.7, that distance right there. And then from, let's see, from the top of, let's see, what am I looking at? There's so many dimensions on here. So from the top line to right here, I think I already did this and it deleted it on me. That's 4.5. I think it deleted it when I deleted something else. And then we have from this little tiny line here to the other end of this line. So, or you could actually just do the overall length of that line there. That one should be 30.5. Okay. So one thing that we don't have right here right now is the angle right here. And I don't believe I see that on this drawing. I think that is kind of defined by the other stuff around it. So we're not going to add that in right now. What we are going to do is we're going to start down here. We're going to exit the Smart Dimension tool just by clicking on it up here. And we're going to go back to our line tool. And I'm going to do an angle here. Straight line going in just a little bit. And then we have an arc at the bottom there. You can see that slight curve. So the way I do this is, there's a couple ways to do it, but one way is to hover back over this end point of this line, and it allows you to draw an arc. Now it's not really letting me make it exactly how I want it. So I'm gonna hit escape. I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna use the arc tool. So if you hit the little down arrow next to any of these tools, there's different options for how to draw them. So you can do a center point arc, a tangent arc, or a 3-point arc. So a tangent arc would start out tangent to the line that it's coming off of. A center point arc, you define where the center point is. in order to define the shape of the arc. And then, where'd it go? And then a 3-point arc, you just define 3 points along it. Let's go ahead and try that one. So we're going to start one end here, and then we're going to put the other end here, and then we're going to kind of have it sag down a little bit like it does on our schematic there. So the center point right now is not going to be defined. You can see that little blue dot in the middle that's moving up and down. That's the center point of our arc. So think of it as like a segment of a circle, and that would be the middle of the circle. So I'm just going to click right there to drop that. All right. And then one thing you can do if you don't really like where things are sitting, like this line comes down really low here. I don't think it's supposed to do that, but since we haven't defined this angle up here, it's just not quite where it's supposed to be. So let's hit this little checkbox to get out of our arc tool, so we're not doing that anymore. And then you can just click on this with your left mouse button, and you can actually drag parts of your drawing around. So let's just kind of do this. Just do a little bit at a time so we don't actually ruin any of the shapes that we've made. Let's kind of go over there to get that out of the way. All right. So let's go back to our line tool, and I'm going to draw a straight line going across, and then we have a little part of a circle kind of here. And see how it kind of curves up on itself there a little bit. But again, you see that dotted line, that means there's going to be a relation to something else. You want to avoid those as much as possible at this point because they'll just mess you up later on. You'll end up with relations that you didn't mean to put in there that are keeping you from defining your drawing the way you actually want it. So I'm going to click here carefully without any lines, any blue dotted lines there. And then we go down at a slight angle here. And then straight down, straight over a little bit. And this is kind of hard to see, but we do have a little bit of a straight line. You see it's in that detail C. It's about, it's 2 millimeters in length. So you're going to draw that little line there. And then you're going to do an arc coming up. Kind of like that. Just kind of eyeball it. That's kind of generally what you're doing at this point. So that's one piece of that arc. And then there was the question earlier, what is that shape? How do we do that? Because it's not really a circle. It's not really a single arc. It's actually 3 arcs. So we're going to do a little arc right here. And I think that's okay if it's, let's make it small because we're kind of running into a problem here where we're going to run out of space, which is always the issue with this, this exercise. So then we have another arc coming up, and yeah, you can see I'm running out of space already. I don't really want any of these relations that it's having pop up here. Let's try and just drop that there. Okay, let's escape out of that. And let's go up here and let's drag everything up again. Oh, and see, it did make a relation with that little circle down there. Because when I move this, that whole thing moves. So I'm going to drop that. And we want that to be tangent. So I'm looking at the relations I have in here. I think this line is perpendicular to line 16, whatever that is. What is this? I'm not sure. Let's delete that perpendicular and see if that fixes our problem. Okay, so yeah, that was it. I don't know what it was doing, but we'll drag this way up here, and you'll notice it kind of left this piece behind. So let's drag that back up there. Okay. Now it's really stretched out and funny looking, but it is what it is. Okay. Um, so now we can keep going, and it gets a little easier from here. That was the hardest part. So we're just going to do a straight line. We're going to go down, over, and up. And we're going to do a straight line going at an angle here. We're going to go over a little more horizontal. I'm going to do like a semicircle here. Okay. And then back over and up to meet up with this line here. So now we have a fully enclosed shape. And you know your shape is fully enclosed when it turns gray on the inside. If it doesn't, it means you've got a gap somewhere and you're going to have to find the gap. And that can be kind of a pain. You gotta like zoom in on the corners and stuff and look for where, things don't meet up. The other option is just don't worry about whether there's a gap right now. Get everything defined as much as you can, and while you're working on fully defining your picture, you'll probably find whatever the gap is. So, alright. So now we're going to start dimensioning this guy. And that's going to be the complicated and annoying part. Oops. I made a line there where I didn't mean to. Okay. So, yeah, the problem is we're going to have a bunch of relations in here that we don't really want to have. But we can deal with those as we go. So, let's see. So we've got 36 from this line here. So let's do smart dimension. From this line here up to the very top of our shape, that should be 36. And you can see there's something funny going on here because this angle doesn't want to move. And I'm not sure what it is. Alright, so we're going to go display and delete relations. And we're going to click on this line. Looks like there aren't any relations on it. So, let's see. Let's click this point here. So we've got this distance, whatever that is. Let's go ahead and delete that. So I just use the delete key and see what happens. Oh, that was the dimension I just added, so never mind. Or is a dimension I added a while ago. Exit out of there. See if we can move this now. Nope, still can't. But we can drag this back down because we got rid of that dimension. So, yeah, for some reason, this line has a fixed angle. And we don't really want it to because we want it to be parallel to this line right here if you look at the drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go add a relation right here. And I'm going to click this line and this line. I'm going to see if I can force them to be parallel or if that overdefines the drawing. Okay, so it made this bottom line parallel to the top one because the top one still won't move. So let's Control Z that. And this is funky down here too. I'm trying to grab things and drag them, but I have my relation tool open, so that's why it's not working. Okay, let's ignore that for a minute. So let's do smart dimension, and we know this line right here should be 3.26. Okay, cool. I think we're getting closer. And then if you look at the little detail there, detail C, it gives you a whole bunch of dimensions to work with. So the radius of this right here is going to be 15. So let's define that right now. And then the radius of this little circle here is going to be 0.7. This angle is going to be 15 degrees. So we're going to click this line, and then you can see it shows the two lines that that it wants the angle to go from. So we'll click that bottom line there and put in 15. So essentially what you're doing is you're making this 15 degrees off of the horizontal plane. These two lines are separated by 25 degrees, 25 degree angle right here. So let's add that in. This arc here has a radius of 6, which is very different from what we actually have. Okay, so we don't want to do that yet. That kind of messed things up for me. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that radius, if I can. So you just left click. If you click right on the number, you can edit the number, but you can't actually delete the dimension. So you want to click somewhere on the arrow that's pointing to what you're dimensioning and just hit the delete key. Alright, and then hopefully we can kind of change that later on. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So you can see things kind of jump around on you and get wonky if you're not really careful. So it's kind of just taking your time and adding dimensions in one at a time. And if it does something you don't like, just undo and try something else. So this one's got a radius of 6. Let's try that. Okay, that kind of worked. And then this little line on the bottom here should be 2. Okay, that kind of worked. Let's see if I can redeem this here. I don't know. This is going to be tricky. Alright. So this is 0.98 right here. This line that suddenly got very long. So we'll do that. 0.98. Okay. Didn't like that. So let's escape out of our smart dimension tool. Let's try dragging this around and see if we can get it back into some kind of reasonable shape. I'm going to delete this middle arc for now. And hopefully that'll make our lives a little easier. Drag this over here. Drag this over somewhere. Let's give this a dimension too, now that we have that middle arc out of the way, so that's also going to be a 6. Alright, it just wants to be a bigger arc than I want it to be. So we'll worry about that in a second. So you can see why this particular assignment is kind of a struggle. especially at first. It's hard to like get all the lines to behave the way you want them to. And a lot of the time, one thing that helps me a lot is just if something keeps like jumping way out of proportion, if you have an arc that you can't get to behave, for instance, just delete it and you can always add it back in later. Um, and that way you can kind of get everything else situated where you want it and then add it in such a way that it fits with the stuff that you do have behaving, if that kind of makes sense. So that's going to be one right there. Um, um, which are you talking about? This one right here? Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with it. I think, yeah, I mean, so it's not supposed to actually connect to this one. There is that little arc in between that connects them. Um, and so this one, like you can move it around in a bunch of different ways. You can move the center point of it, or you can move like pieces of it. But basically, oh boy, um, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna not worry about it. I guess I could also actually just delete this one too. I'm just gonna do that. Yes. Okay. So what I'm actually having trouble with is why is this line not showing any kind of angle, but it's kind of stuck where it is. So here's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to drag this over a little. And I'm just going to do a new line that connects right here. And then this shouldn't have an angle stuck to it. Oops. This shouldn't have an angle stuck to it, so I should be able to just move it if I want to. Looks like it's still kind of doing the same thing. There we go. Alright. So I think the next thing, and this drawing is tricky because it doesn't give you a lot of defined angles. You kind of have to just define dimensions so that angles work out the way they will. Um, and that can be kind of difficult. But we're going to keep adding dimensions and see what we can get defined here. So we know this distance is going to be 4.5. And we already did that one. We already got 30.5. So let's see. We need 35 because we added that and we deleted it again. And I believe 35 goes to this line down here. Yeah, so let's call that 35. Then we've got 36.5, which is from the top to this line here. So we'll do, oh, and that's telling us it's overdefined. So let's cancel. Oh, I think I see what I did. Let's see. So 35. Yeah. I've already got this one, 36. Okay. That's what I did wrong. I already had that dimension in there. So if I were to re-add the same dimension, it would over-define the drawing. So let's change that one to 36.5 because that's what it's supposed to be, it looks like. And then we have 38.5, which is from up here to this lower line here. So it's going to be 38.5. And then we've got 41 to this line here. We're going to go 41. All right. So we're getting somewhere here. Got a couple of dimensions. There's a lot going on in here. So let's see, what are we missing? All right. So one thing I think that is always an issue with this is that there are some dimensions in this drawing that are not defined. So you're going to run into this where you can't get it fully defined. And what you'll want to do is define as much as you can according to the drawing. And then whatever's left at the end, pretty much, give it your own dimension, and preferably a dimension that is not going to conflict with what's already there. But, you know, give it something logical, just like maybe rounds to the nearest tenth of a millimeter on what is already in there. So it's not, so it doesn't destroy what you've already put in. But like these angles, I think at some point there's something you add that defines those, and I'm trying to remember where that shows up. For now, let's just call them like 45. So let's say the angle from this one to this one, let's make that 90 degrees. And then from here to here is going to be Alright, let's try this. Let's do 135. There we go. You can also do something like this. It should be a 45. So that's going to over-define it, but we'll just take that out. So there's a few different ways you can show angles. Let's get rid of this one so I can actually add in another one. Come on, I'm trying to hover over it and it won't. Okay. So, so like this line is a 45 off of this line and this line, or that's what we want anyway, I guess. Ostensibly, it's going to actually be 135 degrees if you measure this way. But you can also click this line and then this line, and depending on where you put the mouse, it'll measure a different angle. So like that's 225, that's 135, this will be 45, this will be 45 here. So however you want to do it, I like to kind of go with the smallest one possible, just because it makes it simple. So I'm just going to do that. And then let's see. So we've got those. Let's add a couple of relations. So let's exit our Smart Dimension tool. Click OK. Let's go to Add Relation. And then let's select this line here. and this line down here, and let's make them equal in length. Okay. That kind of went cattywampus, but we're going to call it good. It just messed with everything down here, but I think that's okay. Because these lines should be a little shorter anyway. Let's see how long it is. Okay, so we can't really make those lines shorter now. Let's undo that relation. Okay. So we do kind of want these lines to be equal to each other, but for right now, let's define some other stuff first. If you look at detail B, it's saying that we've got 10.4 millimeters in that little cutout, which means this line is going to be slightly longer, and I don't think that we're given a dimension for that line. So normally when you have something like a drawing, a CAD drawing, everything should be fully defined. This drawing is kind of crappy, and that's kind of what makes it harder, is that not everything is fully defined, and typically you wouldn't be guessing on stuff like this if you didn't have the dimension in a drawing. You'd have to go out and like take measurements of the actual part and get it as close as you can. But since we've got what we're working with here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to guess that the overall length of this line, based on the fact that that cutout is about 10.4 millimeters from where it touches the line on each end. Let's say that this line is 12 millimeters. Does that kind of make sense? Right now it's 5.78. So let's do 12. Let's see what, oops, where's my mouse? There it is. Let's see what this one is. That's going to over-define something, so we're not going to mess with that right now. Alright. So now you can see our arc here got kind of moved and everything kind of got funky. So a lot of this, this is just, I'm kind of playing around, adding and deleting dimensions, trying to get things to line up the way looks right. And sometimes with this stuff, that's half the battle, is just getting it to look the way you want it to. It's more of a, trial and error thing than anything. So I think we want this line and this line to be horizontal to each other. So let's add a relation there and see what happens to the rest of our sketch. It's not letting me do that, so. Alright. Let's try collinear. There we go. That's what we want. Okay. So these two lines are collinear. I think horizontal, they were already both horizontal. It wasn't putting them on the same horizontal plane. It was just saying, okay, yeah, they're both horizontal. So we actually wanted the collinear relation, which means that they basically become part of two segments of the same line, if that makes sense. So we've got that. Let's move these out a little so we can see what we're working with in here. Alright. And we deleted our arcs here. So let's try and move this over a little. And then this angle here is a little funny. It doesn't really give us that either. So we do know we want this line to be parallel with this line. So let's add a relation there. We tried that before and it kind of messed it up. But let's try dragging this down a little first. Okay. Now add a relation. Select this line and we'll make them parallel. Alright. That appears to have worked. So we're getting closer. It's starting to really look like the shape in our drawing. So let's go ahead and add those two arcs back in now if we can. And I'm just messing with this a little bit, but let's kind of zoom in and let's do 3-point arcs again so we can kind of force them to go where we want them to. So we're going to do one to about here. We'll make the end of this arc sit right above the end of the other arc, and then we're going to curve it a little. And we want the radius to eventually be 6. So we're going to bring it in until it's close to 6. That's pretty close. Alright, and then we'll do another arc here. We'll put the two ends right there like that. And then the radius of this one is going to be 1.5. So let's kind of get it close to that again. There we go. And our shape turned gray again because we got it enclosed. So let's do 1.5 here. And then make this one 6. Pretty close already, so it shouldn't mess anything up. So is everyone with me so far? Is this kind of making sense how I'm going through the process of doing this? Okay. All right, no worries. Yeah, and if anybody, if you need to talk to me, get more help on this later, I am expecting that. This one is tricky. So, let's see. Do we want to keep going on this? Do you kind of get the idea? Or are you able to keep following along, or is everybody kind of lost? Because I can keep going until we get it fully defined, but I don't know if that's, gonna be kind of a waste of time, or if you want to watch me keep messing with it. Yeah. All right. So the idea this week is I just want you guys to try and do what I'm doing right now. Just draw this out, get the outline, mess with it, get it as close as you can, figure out, find the areas that you're struggling with and look at it and, see if you can work through it on your own or see if you have questions for me. If you have questions for me, then ask me and I'll do my best to help you through it. But this is really just learning how to use the tools and the dimensions to make a somewhat complex shape. And don't worry, all your assignments aren't going to be like this. It's not going to be struggling to get things to behave and be fully defined. This one just is a really good intro to like using the different sketch tools pretty much. So all right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. It's been an hour. And I know it's gorgeous outside and you probably don't want to be staring at a computer screen. So, does anyone have any questions for me right now? Yeah. So it should be when you download the program, it should be configured like I have pretty much mostly the default settings right now. And I would leave it that way. Um, chapters 1 and 2 kind of give you an intro of like they just tell you what all the system options are. So you can go through and make sure that like all your options match, and if they don't, you can set them to match. But it's really not necessary. You should, when you first download and open up SolidWorks, it should pretty much look like what I've got here. So, so I wouldn't, you're definitely, if you want to read through it, I think it's helpful. In past quarters, I've kind of gone through that whole chapter and explained everything, but it's really dry and it's just like, here's where your file locations are. Here's where whatever. So I think it's better and more useful for you to kind of use that as a reference as needed. Does that make sense? Yeah, they do. And you can change it so that they stay visible when you exit the sketch, but we won't go into that right now. We'll get into okay, we'll get into that stuff later on. But if you want to go back and keep editing your sketch, you'll see right here in your menu, sketch one, just left click it, and you can go edit sketch, and all your dimensions show back up. Um, yeah, like I said, there's ways to have them always visible. You generally don't want to, just because it leads to really cluttered parts with like dimensions all over the place and you can't tell what drawing they belong to. But sometimes you want like certain dimensions showing up for whatever reasons. So we'll get into that more later on, but I don't want to get too into the weeds while you're still kind of getting the basics. So so detail B and C, detail C is part of it's like it's this area right here, this section that you can see I've highlighted. So you will want to have that as part of your overall outline. Detail B, the little cutouts, they go here and here and here. Um, don't worry about those if you don't get to them. It won't affect your grade. If you do and you want to work on those, by all means do so because it's really good practice. But yeah, I mean, for, having this assignment complete, what I really want to see is just that you did your best to try and make this outline and fully define it. So, does that answer your question? Cool, no problem. All right, anyone else? Nothing else? Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. And I will have this posted tonight. If I forget to send you a message tonight, YouTube takes forever to load stuff. So, like, I'll start uploading, I'll drive home, I'll look, and it still won't be fully uploaded. So if I forget to send you a message tonight, I'll send you a message tomorrow with the link. But you can also always go to my YouTube channel. I have like all my lectures from past quarters on there too. And if you see it on there, it'll just be the most recent one on my channel. Will be that week's lecture because that's all I really post on there. So you can always go there too and just look for it. Nothing's hidden or anything like that. I don't really care sees my, silly babbling. So, um, all right. So I'll have this posted. If you weren't able to follow along today, watch it later and follow along as soon as you can. And if you need to come in the lab Wednesday, I'll be here from 3:30 until 7:30. And yeah, message me with any questions in the meantime. All right. Yeah, sure. Mhm. Okay, let me I'm not gonna pull it up on the screen. Actually, I'm just gonna stop streaming right now since well, mm, I'll just take a look at it really quick. I won't stop streaming quite yet, just in case. Um, and I'm sorry. Can you tell me, Aaron? Okay. I need like 5 computer screens at this point. I have like Discord on one, and then my SolidWorks, and then my drawings. It's just like um yeah. Yeah, it's hard to like keep an eye on everything. All right. 1 second. Sorry, I'm like for some reason I'm having a hard time with my internet right now. What's up? What? I'm sorry, say that one more time. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Do you want to look at this separately in my conference room after? All right. Sounds good. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna stop streaming and everyone everyone have a great evening and rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later.